Smart voices, interesting authors, different ways of thinking, interviews. Welcome to the fold.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
We've got
morning.
an excellent interview here. I'm very honest to have Thomas Quinn. My name's Deborah Beeksma. We've got Irish Granny Helen and Elle Stefanelli here, and we're going to talk about Thomas's book, which is a must-read. It's called God, the Unauthorized Bibliography. Let me, I forgot. I'm going to
The
upload some
unauthorized
pictures.
biography. Can I correct you? It's the unauthorized biography.
Oh, yes. Did I not say that?
You said
It's
bibliography.
early here. You guys are on the East Coast, except for Helen.
Yeah, I've been away
So-
for 2 hours. Yeah.
I'm talking in my sleep right now, so
I'm a hologram.
I'm going to upload images of the book too, so people can see it, and it'll look better than how I talk. But anyway, let me briefly introduce Thomas. I'm just reading off the back of your book, Tom. He's a twice Emmy-nominated writer-producer of documentaries for Discovery Channel, History Channel, and others, and has traveled the world producing programs and delivering talks that deconstruct dumb ideas. We have plenty of those these days. Historical myths, urban legends, conspiracy theories, and bad science. He's also a humorist, being unable to discuss all of this with a straight face.
who could?
And here's his book there, so you can. It's The Wonders of Nano Banana. It looks thicker than it actually is, but I wanted to make it look like a book. And his book that preceded this, that one looks really bad with AI. But it's a great read. What do you do with a chocolate Jesus? So anyway, Tom, welcome to the show, and
It's a pleasure.
let me see where I wanted to go. I want to pull up something else, but why did you write the book? Just kind of give us that while I pull up this other image.
Sure. The writing of the book was sort of a long time in the making. I really got interested in this stuff beginning way back. I'm old enough to remember the Reagan years, and when Ronald Reagan began bringing in rather fringy guys like Pat Robertson and Jerry Falwell into the White House, and taking this evangelical and fundamentalist religion and bringing it into the mainstream. And you started to have a movement where people wanted to start passing laws that reflect their religious beliefs, which is in violation of our Constitution. But that didn't slow them down. And my attitude was, well, if we're going to start passing laws that affect everything from stem cell research to abortion to education to, what I do with my hands when my mother's not looking, and we're going to start regulating this stuff based on this book, let's take a close look at this book. And because I'm kind of a Jersey smartass, I couldn't do it seriously, so I did it with a humorous, tongue-in-cheek attitude. And so it's satirical, but at the same time, it's a carefully researched, accurate history of the Old Testament and the New Testament, the two different books. The God, the Unauthorized Biography is about the Old Testament, and it takes you through chapter and verse of the Old Testament and tells you the history and how it was written and who wrote it and why and interpretations and so forth. And then what do you do with the chocolate Jesus is the same idea about Christianity. And so it all began as one book. I actually wrote it as one big 600-page book. And I had an agent at the time who said, you can't write a humor book that's 600 pages long. So I divided it in two, the two obvious sides being the Old Testament and the New Testament. And that was really the origin of the whole thing. And it was about 30 years in the making, although it took me about 1 year to write it.
That's what struck me about this one is how much research you put into this. Because, and one of the things, I showed this image before, this is floating around on Facebook in our community. And this is why I just don't go to Facebook a lot. People say this kind of stuff, they buy into this story, but they have never read the Bible, let alone know how it was created. And one of the things that you bring out in the beginning chapters of this is how Yahweh, or this Old Testament God, was not the first monolithic God. I mean, do you want to get into that just a little bit?
Sure. There's a theory that Sigmund Freud actually proposed that most scholars really don't believe it, but it does open up some historical accuracy, and that is that back in ancient Egypt, about a century before the time of Moses, roughly 1300 BC or so, uh, there was a pharaoh that came to power named Akhenaten. And whereas Egypt had a whole variety of gods, it was a polytheistic society, Akhenaten decided to change the official religion of Egypt to a monotheistic sun cult. And so he ruled in the name of that sun god for 17 years. It made him terribly unpopular, but he imposed it on everybody for 17 years. And then as soon as he died, all remnants of his religion were chiseled off of monuments and mostly wiped out. And but there's a theory that Freud proposed that, well, gee, among the people who were in Egypt at the time might have been the Hebrew slaves who adopted this idea and never let go of it, while the rest of Egypt went back to their polytheistic gods, and that was basically the foundation of what Moses was ending up proposing. Again, don't buy into most of this, but it's it's just a tempting theory, and it may shed a little bit of light on the origins of these ideas.
Cool, yeah.
Oh, now you've petrified her. She's frozen in fear. You challenged her core beliefs.
Oh my God, yeah. You what did you do to her?
I don't know. There we are. Hypnotized her.
You're reanimated. You've risen from the dead.
I've got rural internet here, which is really bad.
Yeah.
2 tin cans and a string, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it, one of the things I want to kind of bring out the humor that you have in this book too, because I mean, the Bible is a very hard read. We encourage people to read it. If they're going to say that we should follow it, they should read it, right? So you have some really helpful things. The Bible Word Guide. I want to read a few of the words. Hearken means, yo, listen up. Behold, check it out. A covenant is an offer you can't refuse, and wrath is what you get if you refuse a covenant. So he's got a whole thing so that when you get through all this horrible writing, the Bible is so hard to get through. It's especially the Old Testament. It's even worse than the. Now, did you go with the King James, or what did you? Which one are you?
My Bible is the Revised Standard Edition of the King James. So it's a very popular, updated version of the King James. King James is still kind of burdened with a lot of these and thous and that sort of thing. And the Revised Standard Edition maintains the original wording in large part, but it gets rid of some of the more arcane medieval terminology and makes it a little bit more readable.
That is by far the most. That's the one I used to preach for 13 years when I was a Southern Baptist preacher. Was the Revised Standard. Yeah. Well, and
Now
also,
I'm not a big fan of the more modern interpretations. There are some who, they try to hip it up and they try to make it really contemporary. And
like
I think it loses some of its poetic power when they try to do that. It's like in the beginning, God was hanging out, nothing was happening, and so
yeah,
and
messages like that.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about those kind of interpretations.
The whole creationist story. They're really pushing.
Which one? There's two.
Oh, I know there are, but just generally, let's talk about that, because it's one of the things that are being and Thomas does bring that out in the book. The two female creations and all of that, but it's really being pushed into the schools. That situation in Oklahoma was just crazy, where they wanted Trump Bibles and what scares me, I was reading yesterday about the literacy rate in the United States. Good, strong literacy is only like 21%. The majority basically have like a 7th grade literacy.
Oh, lower
And so
than
those
that.
people, they're not going to be able to get through the Bible. They might be able, maybe get through Thomas's book because it'll make you laugh. But part of the problem is in the schools pushing this young earth creationism. I mean, do you want to touch on what the Bible kind of talks about as far as creation is concerned, and the dangers of teaching that to our children?
Well, first of all, it doesn't comport with science. It goes directly against science. I frankly am amazed that they're still making this argument, but they are. Evolution is fake, and the Earth was actually created in 7 literal days. God was all powerful. Why did it take him 7 days to make the universe? And it says that, by the way, God, he rested on the 7th day. Actually, he completed his work on the 7th day, and then he rested. So it was actually only a half a day of work. So we're kind of cheating by making it an entire day of work.
Right.
I think the problem, one of the problems, is that the Bible disagrees with itself about the creation story. And that's because the Bible has a dual origin. The Bible, for instance, will say that the plants were created on the 3rd day, and the sun, the moon, and the stars on the 4th day. I don't know how the plants existed before the sun, but we'll roll with that. The animals were created on the 5th day, and man was created on the 6th day. But then you see a reprise of the creation story a few passages later, where it says that Adam was created before there was any other life on earth. And then God created all the plants and animals, and God named them, and then, figured out that cows were not enough to keep him company, so he got to come up with a woman. And so he extracted a rib and cloned Eve from the rib, and, happily ever after, or maybe not so happily ever after. But the reason why there's these kind of disparities is because there were 2 schools of thought that went into 2 different priesthoods about 3,000 years ago that worshiped the same God but did so in different ways. And so there were 2 deities, one called El, which was the very esoteric, blissful, high god of Canaan. And then there was Yahweh, who was the god, kind of a rustic, angry desert god. Because you had 2 Israelite kingdoms at the time, Judah in the north and Israel in the south. And Judah worshipped El, and Israel worshipped Yahweh. And at some point, when they wrote the Bible, they sandwiched the 2 tellings of the same story together into one narrative. And so the remnants of that dual origin are still there. When you read the word God in the Bible, that's referring to El, the blissful high God, and who did things like, said, let there be light, and there was light. And he was very, sort of kind of a white collar God. He just sort of said things happened. Whereas Yahweh, the God of the southern kingdom, was more of a dynamic and rustic and vengeful God of a desert tribe. And he was the one who scooped up a lump of clay and blew up Adam's nose and brought life to him that way. And so, he was much more sort of hands-on God. He practically had his name on his shirt. And so that dual personality had to be woven together centuries later into a single narrative. And so when you see the word God, it's referring to El. When you see the Lord God, that's referring to Yahweh. And so when about a century ago, German analysts would tease apart the 2 sets of passages, and they ended up with 2 parallel stories, but with 2 gods with 2 different personalities.
And it seems our government, or a lot of Christianity these days, seems to be embracing the Yahweh version of the very warlike,
angry God. Yeah.
Right. They also don't subscribe so much to the Jesus interpretation of Scripture as they do to the Paul interpretation. Mm-hmm. Paul was, he was the first Christian evangelist,
yes.
Who preached and wandered about Rome in the decades following Jesus's. I'm having trouble with my big words today. Crucifixion, and he was the one who larded on a lot of the kind of fundamentalist attitudes that we have today that we're dealing with. Jesus never talked about homosexuality, for instance, whereas Paul had some very serious attitudes about it. I think he might have been a closet case. I'm not sure. But there are two different kinds of Christianity that come out of that tradition. And Paul, I think, is the one that dominates evangelicals today.
I grew up in a religious cult that really embraced the Paul thing and all of the Old Testament laws. Dietary laws, all of that other stuff. And they believed that they were one of the lost tribes of Israel, the
Right.
12 tribes. You want to talk about that and the evolution of these laws to the 10 Commandments?
What's interesting is a lot of these Christian groups, they sort of have an on-off switch when it comes to interpreting scripture. When it comes to referring to people in their, when it comes to, people in their in-group, they're very much the loving and forgiving Jesus and letting things slide and the humanity, joint humanity and so forth. Whereas when they deal with out-groups, outside of their particular groups, then they fall back on the passages from the Old Testament, the righteousness and the wrath and the judgment. And so, they kind of switch back and forth depending upon who they're talking to.
Yeah, Josh Duggar has a tender heart.
By the way, are you hearing a buzzing in the background of my audio? I got a guy with a lawn blower here. He's passing by, and of course his timing is impeccable.
No, always.
It's not bad. I could soften it out afterwards on the recording, and it's not bad.
Okay.
So, Al, did you have any comments about any of that, or?
Actually, no. It's spot on, and I've been talking about this since 2010. My first book. Yeah, spot on, Thomas. That's fantastic.
When you were a preacher,
nothing to add for that.
When you were a preacher, Al, which version of these gods did you subscribe to?
Well, being seminary trained, you don't get that information. They don't talk about that split. God is all one. And if you don't understand the scripture, then you've got some praying to do, and you have some more reading to do, maybe some fasting thrown in there. Seminary, especially the Southern Baptist, is very straightforward. They're very doctrinally centered, and they do not allow for any, let's just say, questioning. Going to seminary is actually what shattered my faith.
Well, I think that's a weakness that they display. If you're not subject to questioning, then that to me describes a weakness of faith.
Yeah.
Because if you're peddling the eternal truth of God, you ought to be able to stand up to a couple of tough questions from mere humans.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then it's a good thing we questioned you, because you don't have much of an argument.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, I have done hundreds of debates, and the only one that I conceded to as a loss was with, I can't remember his name for the life of me. It just escapes me. But we were on a panel, and I had asked the basic question: can you prove the existence of God? And generally, the response I would get from that would be, pretty standard. But this guy said, no, I can't prove it. That's the whole point of faith. So
I don't really understand that argument. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you?
Yeah. Well, he said, for me, and I'm paraphrasing here. He said, for me, I don't need any proof because I believe unconditionally that God exists. So anything that you have to say is going to be, in my mind, predicated by it doesn't matter because I believe. And that was the crux of what I've been trying to get done in debates for years, especially with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And this guy said, look, I don't care what you say. I don't care what scientific proof you have or lack of proof. I don't care what arguments you have. It doesn't matter because my faith tells me that God is real. And there's no response to that. That's the end of the debate.
I always consider that a bogus argument too.
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, because, like, for instance, I mean, we're supposed to obey God because of his wisdom and guidance and so forth.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I love my mother, and I wouldn't love her more or obey her more if I had no proof of her existence. If I only knew about her through legends and old books. So I don't understand quite why faith is a necessary component of loving or obeying God, other than the fact that you don't have the goods to prove your point, and so therefore not proving the point becomes the virtue.
Yeah, and when you get to that point in a conversation or a debate, the debate's over, because there's nothing that you're going to do or say or present that individual is going to deem as a valid point, or okay, yeah, let me look into this a little more. You may have a point. They got blinders on, and that's pretty much it.
Very culty behavior.
Yeah. There's no point in going on, because you're not going to change minds. People used to ask me, why in the world do you exert so much effort with books and your lectures and all that? And I'm like, I'm not trying to change minds. I'm just trying to let people, like-minded people, know that they have support. There are people out there that understand, and you have a community of your own. You don't have to go to church to have this community. This is your community, a community of atheists and agnostics and spiritual people even, but that don't subscribe to a religion, kind of like Irish Granny Helen. You can be spiritual to a point, but not believe, not have a base in scripture and all that.
A lot of theists, they sort of take the view that, well, okay, I believe in this faith, and Muslims believe in that faith, and so forth. And well, what do atheists believe in? And it's like, it's kind of the wrong question.
Yeah.
Because it's not like atheists, belong to a particular group with a particular doctrine. It's basically, I liken it to belonging to a country club. Some belong to the Jewish country club. Some belong to the Christian country club, or the Catholic or the Muslim or whatever. An atheist does not belong to the atheist country club. An atheist is somebody who doesn't belong to any country club.
Yeah, it's a lack of belief. That's all it is. It's a lack of belief.
And they cover the full political spectrum and sociological spectrum. There's no one school of thought.
Yeah, and I have met. Matter of fact, one of them just passed away. I've met people in my life when I, was on the lecture circuit, where they're like, I don't believe in God. I guess I'm a strong agnostic or an atheist, but I love the teachings of Jesus in the Bible.
Yes.
I have run across that very, very often, and I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, be kind, to Beatitudes and all that, and that's generally good advice to be a decent human. You don't have to believe in a deity to understand that this is,
I was just going to say, that's the Thomas Jefferson view, which is the view I take, which is that he believed that the philosophy of Jesus was one of the most benign and wise ever preached. Right. But he rejected the supernatural aspects of the story.
Yeah.
So, he wrote something that's now called the Jefferson Bible.
Yeah.
And what he did was he literally cut out the passages of the 4 different gospels and sandwiched them together into a single chronology, so that it's just one life story instead of 4. But he weeded out all of the miracle stories. So in the Jefferson Bible, there's no miraculous birth, there's no resurrection. It's all about the philosophy of Jesus, not about the worship or the supernatural aspect of the story.
Yes.
And this is the part I saw something a couple months ago where people were like yelling at their preacher who was talking about the teachings of Jesus and saying that's woke. I don't subscribe to that. That's woke. They're going into that hardcore Yahweh sort of
well, you read the Beatitudes, and the Beatitudes sound very woke.
Yes, they're very
woke. I had someone comment on something or another. I can't remember, because there's so much crap coming through my social media. I had one guy who it was about the war in Iran, and that this whole geopolitical thing that's going on now. And someone had said, this goes against the teachings of Christ, which I thought was pretty bold to put in a right-wing post. And the majority of the responses revolved around, prove to me, show me in the Bible where Jesus is against this.
They're conflating
like, what?
Angry God.
What? Let me show you in the Bible where Jesus is against. I just left.
Well, and we've got Huckabee, our ambassador to Israel, talking, pulling on this Old Testament crap about Israel has to be, Yeah. I mean, you address a lot of it. It's been a few months since I read your book, Thomas. Did you go into that specifically about the Israeli, the promise to Israel where it could expand?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of American support for Israel comes from evangelical Christians, not from American Jews.
Mm-hmm.
American Jews are certainly supportive of Israel and certainly want the country to survive and to thrive. They're not always crazy about the governments they elect.
Right.
And so there's a lot of mixed opinion. Yeah. Right. Whereas evangelicals, very right-wing governments in Israel or pretty much anywhere else. And that's really the distinction that we're making here is between right-wing and left-wing versions of the faith. The right-wing, the far right-wing version of almost any faith, whether it's Islam or Judaism or anything, are the ones that we have a problem with. Those are the ones that tend to be autocratic and very punishment and wrath oriented. And it's the left leaning side of these faiths that are the more benevolent and closer to things like Buddhism and Hinduism, and not so much full of judgment as guidance on how to be a better human being. And so that's one of the big differences. And really the Huckabee attitude, not surprisingly, is kind of a medieval attitude. Is that, one of the reasons for the Crusades was the fact that at the time, AD 1000, they were expecting Jesus to come back, and he was a no-show. And so they thought that, well, that's because Muslims are controlling the Holy Land right now. And so we've got to go in and we have to have believers controlling the Holy Land for Jesus to come back and establish his kingdom. So there's still a lot of that attitude that, well, we have to hold on to the Judeo-Christian control of that land because otherwise Jesus might not come back or not come back in our lifetime and what have you. And that's a lot of the motivation behind it.
Yeah.
So
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Kind of a transactional Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're fulfilling biblical prophecy over there somehow or other. Thomas, I have to confess that bless me, Father, I haven't read your book, but I'm going to. I just heard about it a couple of days ago.
I just bought it.
I'm going to. And so I'm putting you on the spot. I'm going to invite you to come talk about it after I'm done presenting it. Yeah. I just wanted to say that I don't understand the need to parse the Bible. I love the concept, and I'm totally in agreement with everything I've heard. However, I was raised a Catholic, and I don't practice that. I've already perfected it. I don't understand. I spent 17 years, served 17 years hard time, in Catholic schools. And I went to college with Jesuits. And they didn't have the same relationship with an angry God and the Bible. I studied the Bible, and their approach was the Bible as literature and the stories in the Bible as allegory. And you said something about the commonality of the basic philosophical beliefs worldwide in most religions. It's a Gnostic allegory. And why are we, not us, but why we humans are arguing about these minute details and something that's meant to be taken symbolically? It's a little bit like trying to prove that Aesop's fables were real. They have a message.
They weren't.
Exactly. Well, the Jesuits do take a more intellectual approach to the Bible than a lot of different sects do. they're trying to find, they're trying to unearth history as much as theology, I think, and which I think is a good thing. I think that they try to do that, but at the end of the day, they're still going to come back to, and Jesus is the Son of God, and therefore, we should all follow
But not if they truly believe in Gnostic philosophy, because the whole narrative, all of the miracles, all of the stories, the parables are all allegorical and symbolic. And we wouldn't recognize that. But if you had been alive 2,000 years ago and were a pagan, you very well would have recognized that, oh, there's a significance to 12 apostles. There's a significance to a star falling from the sky over a cave.
All those 3 days, the 3 days at the solstice. Yeah.
Yeah, none of which were original with the Christian story.
Pardon me?
None of these ideas were original with the Christian story.
Correct.
There were a number of pagan faiths that existed before that with similar stories.
Right. They say that Christian Gnostics have more in common with pagan Gnostics and Jewish Gnostics and Hindu Gnostics than with their own co-religionists. That the real message, the philosophy, has been distorted for what control reasons, historical, political, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Well, he also goes into all the numbers in this book too. Where I see the value of these kind of things is that we have this like blind belief that's just ingrained in our culture, and people don't examine where that belief comes from. I in this cult I grew up in, we had to read the Bible, and we had to do it from Friday night sunset to Saturday night sunset, because that was the Holy Sabbath, and we weren't allowed to work. We weren't allowed to do anything during this time except for read the Bible. And it made absolutely no sense to me. Getting to the point, Cain and Abel, and Cain is kicked out, and then all of a sudden he's in this town with all these other people and gets married. And I remember asking my dad.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
The first literary cheat in the Bible. Well, I do a talk. You were talking about the personalities of God. I do a talk that's called God Needs Therapy. And basically, it's a story of that it looks at God the way that the Jesuits did, as a literary character that evolves over time and develops over time. And the tradition basically added on layers of personality and attitude and so forth as the tradition went on. So you begin with a God with a sort of one personality, but then he sort of evolves and changes his rules and all. Originally you had a God wanted Adam and Eve and a couple of vegan nudists walking around, in the Garden of Eden in paradise. And they didn't know that they were naked, so they were kind of, which, by the way, is a proof that God is a male, because he wants his company to be clueless and naked. So,
and bring beer.
But then later, after Noah, he introduces things like, well, now you can eat meat, and there is such a thing as slavery, and that executions are okay, and the death penalty and so forth, and it takes a much darker turn. Yeah. And so, God goes from being a Democrat to being a Republican in that sense. And
here's how to care for your slaves.
They're right. And so there was an evolution to this character. What I do in this talk is talk about how Yahweh evolved over time. It's an idea borrowed actually from Carl Jung, who did it. He psychoanalyzed God in the book of Job, and I sort of expanded it to the entire Old Testament and the sort of personality evolution that he goes through.
And you kind of go through that in this book. You come out at the end seeing this evolution. It's almost like in the I don't know, like conspiracy community, whatever you want to call it, New Age. It's evolved from angels, and Helen has brought this up quite a bit. It's evolved from angels into UFOs. As our technology advances, our experiences or whatever, sightings have changed too. And as you portray this, as you go through the you kind of see that evolution. It kind of changes with the culture.
Well, yeah, angels are basically, or rather aliens are kind of an update of the angel idea. There's sort of these benevolent beings from the sky who come down to try and guide us into a better world. And they have a lot of similar qualities. They wear simple clothing. they glow in the dark, and they avoid cameras.
They walk through walls. They have weird lights around them. I mean, you could go on and on. You know, there's a guy called Jacques Vallée who I think he was a computer expert a long time ago in the 60s, but he went on and sort of evolved his interest into these exact topics. And he's the one who drew the line, the thread between fairies and goblins and shape-shifting, baby-stealing entities to Marian apparitions and now UFOs. And he works now, well, not works with, but often is in agreement with a woman named Diane Pasulka, and she's a professor of religion in North Carolina. She was writing her thesis on Marian apparitions and began to realize, wait a minute, these things keep repeating globally, historically, chronologically, forever in the human narrative. And they ask, are we being toyed with by some interdimensional thing? I mean, this is definitely a theory that presents itself in a way that it'll be accepted in any given culture and time. So if they had shown up as gray aliens that, you know, that landed with all the mechanical accoutrement in, I don't know, the year 200, people would have really freaked out. But what did they appear as? They appeared as angels and messengers of God, something a little softer.
That Eric von Daniken, Chariots of the Gods, back in 68, 67, 60, I can't remember. I was a child, but
he just died.
Yeah, he did. That's bad. No, we all go sometime, right? That book, I read that, and for me, that kicked off because I was Alan. I was in that prison too. I went to Catholic school.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yes, I did. So we're kindred spirits here. But yeah, that book was actually the first written thing that I read that made me go,
Yep.
Not that I was old enough to have the moxie to understand everything in that book. I was, I don't know, 12 or something. But it did put that seed in my head of, you know, maybe this isn't all what it's cracked up to be. Maybe the nuns with the big rulers that slap your hands when you talk, you know, maybe
most of it is other nonsense, but it is a provocative book.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah.
It's the gateway drug.
It's a work of fiction, you know, but it does put that seed in your head.
Yeah.
You know, to look further, to investigate further, to do a little more research, to find viable sources, you know, that have credibility, you know.
Well, it opens your mind to questioning it.
Yeah.
Now, I want to confess something to you. I used that book as a book report at my Catholic girls' school. Imagine the reception I got.
I love it. Tom, did you grow up in a religious background or not?
No, I grew up in a marginally middle class Christian home. My mother was Catholic. My dad was Protestant. I was baptized Presbyterian, I believe. And but we were not regular churchgoers or religious people. I think my parents, you know, sort of believed in Jesus and you know, in a sort of pedestrian way that I think most Americans do.
We were Christian.
But you know, Christmas was about gifts and trees, and Easter was about eggs and rabbits and so forth, and there wasn't a whole lot of holiness involved in most of it. They taught morality to me, but they didn't teach it through God. They never said you should do this or not do this because Jesus said so or because God teaches us. It's more, you know, it's just the right thing to do. It's a decent thing to do. It's a moral thing to do.
Well, that's why the church frowns on mixed marriages like that.
Maybe they don't want you to be talked out of your faith.
That's right. Waters it down, right?
Well, my parents were nominal Christians. They were Creaster Christians. Went to church on Christmas and Easter. Other than that, the only reason I ended up in Catholic school was my grandmother.
Oh.
Yeah, because she lived with us. And she was, kind of, no, you need to learn the scriptures. You need to learn.
Yeah.
And we didn't speak English in my house. So I was like 5 or 6. We spoke
You spoke Italian?
So going to Catholic school was a challenge. And I don't think I learned really anything, except I can't wait till this is over.
Well, we spent all of October and all of May on our knees in the living room after dinner every day for a month, saying the rosary, because it was the month of Mary and then it was the month of the rosary. Yeah. Hardcore. Yeah. Really hardcore. Yeah.
No. I still have my grandmother's rosary from the Vatican.
Why
do you keep that? Because it was my grandmother's.
Exactly.
Yep. So, Thomas, another thing that you touch on are we'll get into the funny ones too, but the 10 Commandments. There's been this push now that they want the 10 Commandments everywhere in schools, some government. What are your what did you find in your studies about the 10 Commandments?
Well, in the Unauthorized Biography book, can you hear me over all this buzzing? For some reason, they decided to trim the hedges just right now. They got a guy right outside the window.
I thought they were shampooing.
Apparently, just planned it.
No,
I thought it was the aliens.
Huh? I can go out and get rid of him if you need.
No, it's fine.
Is it okay? Okay,
yeah.
He's bugging me. Anyway, I do a section in there about the 10 Commandments, and I kind of go through each one of them with a little essay on each one of them. And waiting for this guy to go by here because I can barely hear myself speak here. Okay, a little better. And so I do a take on each one of them. And that, on the surface, they would seem like, first of all, there aren't necessarily 10. They're not numbered in the scripture. Some people count as many as 14.
Yeah, there's a variety.
You also have different lists of 10.
Right.
There's a Protestant version and a Catholic version and a Jewish version. And there's also a second list of 10 commandments that come later on in scripture. And they disagree almost entirely with the first set of commandments. So there's a lot of debate about what exactly are the 10 commandments. And so if you want to post them in the school, it's like you're kind of confronted with, well, which list are we going to put up there? And most of them just have a lot of different interpretations and nuances to them. They seem like they're very simple, straightforward rules, but they're actually not. Thou shalt not kill. What could be more straightforward, right? Except that obviously that doesn't count for plants because otherwise we'd have nothing to eat. Maybe it only counts for animals and people, but then we're all stuck with being vegans. So, okay, we'll just say it counts for just people. Okay, but then you don't have executions. You don't have capital punishment. Well, okay, maybe it's just for bad people. And who are the bad people? Well, they're the ones who our leaders say are bad people. We know that because that's what they tell us. And so you have a lot of interpretive leeway with a lot of these commandments. And I kind of go through each one of them. Things like thou shalt not covet. Okay. Coveting is, don't covet thy neighbor's property. Don't covet thy neighbor's wife. One set of commandments regard those as two separate commandments.
Right.
And the others regard as a single one. I think the Catholics are the ones who separate them. Arguing that coveting your neighbor's wife is not the same thing as coveting your neighbor's snowblower.
That's
which they may have a point there. And so we like to explore those different things. Thou shalt not. And then, coveting what your neighbor has, that kind of drives the American economy, right? It's all about keeping up with the Joneses, and the Joneses buy a lot of shit. So it's not easy.
I was coveting that chocolate Jesus on the cover of your book, so unavoidable.
I used to send out chocolate Jesus bars with copies of the book. You could actually buy a chocolate Jesus. You can actually buy a cross made out of chocolate. And one of the things the reason why I came up with the title is because what do you do with the chocolate Jesus? Do you work your way up the legs and go right for the halo?
Don't want to bite the head off.
Bite the head off, man. Bite the head off.
Last dessert. Is it like the Eucharist, where it changes into the flesh of Christ when it touches your lips? And if so, is that okay for a low carb diet? So,
well, it has
a lot of deep
calories,
questions there.
It was a good question.
Miraculous.
Very good question.
But I think that having an understanding of these, because most people don't know there's these different sets of 10 commandments.
Correct.
And they think, oh, this is, you try to modernize it, and these are so good to have in your schools or whatever, because they're going to instill some sense of morality without really knowing anything about it. And you put it in a very thoughtful and funny way in this book, but thoughtful too and well researched. And I was just struck by that, because we're seeing, maybe not in your states, but in Arizona, I'm seeing a lot of that. They want the 10 commandments everywhere. And these vouchers, basically get rid of public schools and just all these religious schools out here. And, people just agree with it, thinking, oh, this is good, it's moral. But they don't understand the origin of these stories at all. I think that's very important. And this whole thing about morality, absolute morality versus what is the other?
Moral relativism?
Yes, moral relativism. That, I remember when we were doing the God discussion, that was like this huge thing. The religious right was just so against moral relativism. And that's what scares me a lot, is that if you're going to take the Bible as you understand it, or whatever, whoever tells you you're supposed to understand it as, and have an absolute morality associated with it, it's just insane. Because the Old Testament, look at all this stuff about slavery in there. It's the wars, there's so much blood sacrifice in there.
Yeah.
What is it? What
the
does it
Bible
mean?
never envisions a world without slavery. And so you have, and the fact that, the Christian dominated Europe was the greatest slave keeping civilization in history. So, and now suddenly God, is against slavery and against racism and against sexism and all these things. So God changes his mind a lot. Yeah. And so there goes moral absolutes.
Well, I think, putting things like the 10 Commandments, or even in God we trust, these sorts of things are a form of psychological control. I don't think people fully recognize that it's about constantly reminding you subconsciously about the power and the control and the authoritarian nature of the patriarchy. And it's just reinforced and they want that kind of control. People willingly, who was it that said that we would willingly give ourselves into our own enslavement?
That's a false thing.
No, no, it was more.
But what does it mean to be moral, right? There are so many variables to consider. You got cultural differences, religious beliefs, personal circumstances, and several other aspects of our lives that are invariably included in our synthesis of what's right and what's wrong. So given enough time, each one of us can probably produce a very lengthy list of values that seem true to some and seem false to another. So who's right? All of them? None of them?
If you do a Venn diagram, if you take all religions and do a Venn diagram, it all boils down to something laughably simple. Do unto others. Do unto others. That's it. That's
There's
morality.
No universally correct system of morality that fits every single person, regardless of their individuality. So when you condense it all down, morality is simply a system of how we treat each other.
Right.
But that's where the commonalities end. If we try to get more complex than that, you end up with a decidedly immoral form of morality, which is it is an oxymoron, but it treads on condemnations, judgments, absolute rights and wrongs. It's a cluster muck, is what it is.
Well, the morality is based on a theory of man and a theory of the universe and man's place in it. Right. So if you believe, for instance, if you believe that in the Christian concept that man is born in sin and that he tends towards evil, therefore in a world where there's a battle between good and evil, heaven and hell, and man is on the frontier between the two, it becomes, the system of obeying God and obeying these commandments and things like that becomes the definition of morality. Whereas the Enlightenment turned that around and they basically said that man was the rational being and that he was capable of freedom. And so whereas in medieval society, man was tended towards sin and therefore needed a strict church to keep it within the guardrails of Christian propriety, in the modern world, the Enlightenment said that man was basically good, that he was basically rational, and reason demands freedom. Reason demands freedom to ask questions, gather information, come up with ideas, and so forth. And so therefore, it's freedom that becomes the moral measure rather than obedience.
Well, the indoctrinated, they form their morality from their belief that their decision is in line with the deity they follow. Okay. So decisions based on religious doctrine are viewed by the indoctrinated as the absolute pinnacle of morality. But on the other side, the enlightened, they form their morality based on what's best for their society, their empathy towards a fellow human, their own enlightened self-interest, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, Thomas, you spot on. Yep.
One of the arguments they make is, well, how could you have a moral world if you don't believe in a God with absolute moral values? What if you simply base it on human philosophy? What's to stop that philosophy from morphing, evolving into other sinister forms? And the answer is nothing. But what they don't observe is that what prevents a believer in God from morphing their morality into anything they want to? And the answer is nothing. Because all you simply do is reinterpret your understanding of God. Like I say, 300 years ago, God believed in monarchy. Now he believes in democracy.
Right.
300 years ago, they believed that man should be dominating over women. Today, God believes more in gender equality. 300 years ago, free speech was a vice. Today, it's a virtue. So, God has done a complete 180 on, a lot of what we regard as cornerstone moral values.
Yeah. I understand, all the points that you're making, and it makes absolute sense in the context of needing to discuss these things. And maybe I'm just very simple, and maybe extremely naive, but it always comes back down to this one thing for me personally. You treat people the way you want to be treated, and you take your society from that standpoint. All the other arguments are extraneous. They just complicate things unnecessarily, and they virtually always come from a desire to be the top dog, to be in control, to be the authority, and letting go of that and being concerned about the people around you and treating them well, like you would like to be treated yourself. It seems so simple to me, and I don't understand why we complicate it, but I do understand why we complicate it, because that way somebody can grab power. It's always what it boils down to.
Yeah, does God really care what we eat? All these dietary restrictions that you read about in scripture or elsewhere. And the kind of, these are more sociological things that are built into it, so that it's actually a way of separating people by saying there are certain things you can eat, certain things you can't.
Right.
Meals are one of the great bonding experiences of human life. And if one group of people can't eat something that another group of people does, it keeps them separate.
Yep. Or one gender has to eat later and can't eat with the main group.
I haven't heard of that one, but okay.
One of the things, we're approaching an hour here, but I just want to mention, people buy this book if for nothing else. The 603 more laws you probably broke before breakfast. It's wonderful. It's Thomas. Paul. I had to read that about 2 or 3 times because I was just crying laughing. It is so good,
Well, I think we've committed heresy here right now, right?
We did.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the hardest thing, having to read that Bible as a kid. It just seems so violent and scary to me, and confusing, and I didn't understand it. And I grew, what my whole goal was to make it to 18 and just get the hell out of there and never deal with a religion again, and so I really went through a hatred kind of thing for it for a while, just because I saw how damaging, and that's what scares me about our government right now. They're pushing into that same kind of medieval interpretation, as you said. But one of the things, if you read the Old Testament, it's like schizophrenic. So one of my questions for you, Tom, if God were your best friend, what kind of intervention would you do if your best friend were behaving as this Old Testament God? What would you do?
First of all, I would ask him to chill a little bit, and I would say, look, you want us to obey you, you want us to believe in you, love you, what have you. Just appear in the sky. You just say, "Hey, I'm here. Mystery over. Now straighten up." That's all it would take. You just appear all around the world in the sky, some absolutely undeniable thing, and everybody would be on the same page instantly. No, God has a flair for soap opera. He likes to do things the hard way. And so he's going to start by sending his message by, writing commandments at a time when nobody could read, and, not thinking ahead on this kind of stuff. So I think this is the sort of advice I would give, just to be more effective. I mean, you want to spread the word? Okay. You could have, waited for video, because that's a much
that would have been great
way of doing it, or at least the Xerox people. Okay?
Well, it just invented when the world was created. Just do it during that flash video. Yeah. Xerox machines.
I'd give him a gummy and a bag of Funyuns.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, I think he prefers like burnt toast and appearing
yes.
Or tortilla chips.
Yeah.
So Helen and Al, do you guys have one more question? Because we're so lucky to be able to talk with Thomas. So I want to give Helen, you a chance to ask him a question, and Al before we close out.
Go ahead, Helen.
Oh, well, thank you. I guess I've already asked it, Tom. I'm inviting you to my channel as soon as I read your book and cover it, because I love this topic. I could talk with you endlessly all day long. I have a million questions. So Thank you for letting me be included in this. It's been really fun.
Oh, great. Thank you. Appreciate being here.
And, I feel like you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth. We have similar backgrounds. We've both done lectures and written books on the same subjects. So I don't have a question, but I do have the statement. And my statement is, thank you for continuing this. And thank you for putting out this information in a format that has humor in it, because my books are not humorous at all. They're kind of like dry. So what you're doing, what you've done, and what you continue to do is very well appreciated in our non-country club community.
I wanted to say that the two books, by the way, little promotion here. I have a website that is trquinn, trquinn.com. That's my website, where you can read samples from the book online, and you can also read regular blogs that I post about things like the 8 rules to successful prophecy, or these kind of things, and having a lot of fun with a lot of religious belief, and again, I try and do it with humor, because more people will read it. I think I'm trying to reach a popular audience, people who would normally not read about the history or religion, but they can have a lot of fun with the book and get the education at the same time.
Exactly. And we will have your website posted in the show description, all that kind of stuff. It's a wonderful website. It's really cute. I love it.
I also have a group. I'm still setting up some Facebook pages I'm struggling with here, and my social media. It's been an education. But I have a Facebook group called The Doubting Thomas. And that is also a place where people can engage with me in conversation about the things that they might read on the website.
I'll put that in the description too, because the audience here is such a mix, but most of them are just really tired of religious influence in our politics. I mean, that's what it comes down to. A lot of us, like, if you want to believe in that, that's fine. Just don't push it on me. you know, and don't kill our nation over it and our science. And, you know, that's the thing that's so disturbing. So I will put your...
I'm just going to say, last little promotional pitch here. I've been signing up on like X and Instagram and TikTok and all of them. And I have my handle on all of them is TRQUINN, TRQuinn 999. And that's the handle that I use for.
You couldn't have gone with 666.
I know.
No, I wasn't going to go there. No.
Let me write that down so I can include all this.
You would have got a lot of attention.
TRQuinn 999.
Okay.
And then the website is trquinn.com.
Right. Yeah,
and
we'll have that in there. And in the edits, I'll run a banner through so you can see that too. So
I'm going to have to go here soon because I've kind of commandeered my wife's office and she has to go to work now.
Well, I have to go to work too. So I want to thank you guys very, very much. So good to see you again, Thomas. It's just so good. It's like the old days. Hey there, Day. So y'all have a great day, and I'll get you guys tapes of this probably tonight or tomorrow.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Tell us what you think. Leave a comment below. Subscribe for more or sign up to be a guest at cosmicfold.net.